So, when did Link become so gay? Link is supposed to be the hero of The Legend of Zelda, who goes on the quest to slay the evil bull demon Ganon and saves Princess Zelda. If you're asking me, it's a pretty generic and overdone story which leaves romance open between the male and female leads. In fact, the archetype of the hero often does get the girl or the princess in such cases. Sometimes he's a prince, others he's just a hero, even ogres. But in the end, once the day is saved, they always get the girl. However, with the exception of arguably Skyward Sword, Link and Zelda never get together in any meaningful capacity. I mean, they certainly care about each other and their safety in every incarnation, along with even being friends, but Link isn't about to bend on one knee, have a house mortgage, and 2.5 kids with Zelda anytime soon. What I really mean to say is, that when it comes to the hero archetype, there's always an expectation that the hero who saves the girl gets the girl, and that idea is pretty ingrained in most Legend of Zelda fans, even when Link and Zelda don't have that kind of relationship and scarcely ever express romantic interests at all, period. And then Breath of the Wild came out, which shattered Link's fragile masculinity. One costume. One costume was all it took for Legend of Zelda fans to embrace a more femboy Link. And so, it began. Progressive media outlets began writing stories and videos calling Link a queer icon, while others began writing hit pieces on Breath of the Wild saying Link is a straight, Christian hero, and that these gays were forcing a narrative onto a video game that didn't deserve it. One girly costume was all it took. But Link doesn't owe his gender ambiguity or his femininity to any of those pieces of armor, nor any one game. I will argue rather that he owes it to the young, the magical red-headed boy of our dreams, Buddy. Okay, but for real though, it's Peter Pan. Is it really that shocking a revelation? I mean, look at Link, then Peter Pan, then Link, then Peter Pan, then Link, and then Peter Pan. The similarities are pretty surface level. Shigeru Miyamoto wanted Link to be recognizable, and so Link's original sprite artist chose to model his sprite off of Peter Pan. But the parallels between them run much deeper than their appearance, and it all starts in 1904, over 80 years before The Legend of Zelda came out. So, this author, J.M. Barrie, wrote this book, The Little White Bird, and published it in 1902. In The Little White Bird, he writes about a little baby boy who, upon hearing what his parents thought his life would be like, just flew out of the nearest window. Like, right out that window. Peter Pan. Mr. Barrie is also a playwright and quickly pens the stage play Peter Pan, great name by the way, which opened production in London. The play stars two leads, Peter Pan, who, after recruiting more children to Neverland, has to save the female lead, Wendy, from the only adult male antagonist, Captain Hook. Now, getting swept off your feet and saved by a dashing young hero is pretty romantic, so Wendy starts feeling some type of way about Peter. But Peter leaves her feelings unrequited, so she and the other kids return to their home in London. And eventually, they become boring adults with 2.5 kids with a flat in London. Now, because Peter is a young boy who never grows old, doesn't like romance, and plays the flute, they cast a woman, Nina, in the role of Peter Pan. Was there any backlash to this decision? Was it part of some sinister ploy to make young boys effeminate and take away their masculinity? Is this when the trans agenda was born? No. From what I read, this was actually quite common in the early 1900s for Britain. Now, I claim to be no expert in the subject, but again, from what I read, in the times of Shakespeare, only men were allowed to act, and so to fill female roles, Shakespeare had young boys fill the roles of women in his place. The casting decision had its detractors at the time for sure, but I mean, what was he supposed to do? Women were literally not allowed to act in the first place. And since Shakespeare's plays were just that popular, drag eventually caught on. Insert cultural exchange and the passing of time, drag became socially acceptable in the UK. So that makes drag just as much a part of Western culture as Greek statues are, and I'm not kidding. The reason young boys in Shakespeare's time were allowed to play women convincingly was because their society believed young boys looked more like women and vice versa, and were thus more believable as women, and so eventually in the Victorian era, women were allowed to play the roles of young boys because their features were almost matched those of prepubescent boys. Queen Elizabeth II herself even starred in one such play, playing the role of Aladdin in her youth. Isn't that cool? Like, it's pretty obvious that young boys don't have rippling muscles, leathery skin, or facial hair. And like most women of any age, young boys tend to have soft, delicate skin and a slender frame. As a result, the most criticism these women got for playing these roles was that it was to some degree erotic and immoral. The women casted in the roles of young boys, the principal boy as they were called in these productions, weren't supposed to convince the audience that they were men or even male, much like drag today isn't supposed to convince you that the drag queen is female in some cases. But to remind the audience that the young male lead was a woman, they would often shape their clothes to emphasize their womanly figure, often posed as such. You know, hands on the hips, clenched fingernails, that sort of thing. The children in the audience would be entertained by the play itself, and the men accompanying them would be entertained, and so the first production of Peter Pan received glowing reviews and earned its principal boy, Nina, favorable reviews, and began the tradition of casting a woman as Peter Pan, at least until the 1980s, where the men would begin to masculinize Peter Pan, and further teasing his, up to that point, non-existent relationship with Wendy. But for nearly 80 years, Peter Pan had traditionally been played by women. This ingrained a certain femininity in the character of the boy who wouldn't grow up. And if you've been paying attention, you should have noticed the obvious parallels between The Legend of Zelda and Peter Pan. Peter plays the flutes, Link plays the ocarina. Their strongest relationship is with a girl they don't express explicit romantic feelings for. The antagonist in both stories is a hyper-masculine man. Link and Peter never grow old. And because the protagonists of both stories lack masculine traits to a degree, people start to question their sexuality in the first place. I mean, the boy's best friend is literally a fairy. And then eventually, The Legend of Zelda would come out and would take inspiration from Peter Pan when developing their main protagonist, Link. Why did they name Link anyway? But decide to name the main series The Legend of Zelda. Typically, games which feature a name as the title usually has the title character as the playable character. Bayonetta, Shantae, Lara Croft, Bayonetta. I can't believe she lied about how much money she got paid. And then, even looking at games Shigeru Miyamoto had a hand in creating, you have Donkey Kong, the Super Mario Bros., and then you have The Legend of Zelda. Actually just chilling in a cave somewhere waiting for the real main character to come save her. According to various articles on the subject, Shigeru Miyamoto had read The Great Gatsby and thought the name Zelda was fitting for a beautiful princess. And I do have to say, The Legend of Zelda does roll off the tongue a bit better than The Legend of Link. But as a result of this choice, moms who were buying gifts for their kids, dads who were half paying attention, and children who couldn't read were told that this was The Legend of Zelda, and everyone, understandably, presumed that the block of pixels that was the main character had to be Zelda, and that was the beginning of Link getting mistaken for the beautiful Princess Zelda. Let that sink in. Most people passively familiar with the game would mistake Link for a beautiful princess. Then, when they got to play the game, would eventually find out that Link is Link and Zelda is Zelda, but the gender confusion and name confusion wouldn't ever end, because Link was always pretty girly. Even when he isn't portrayed as a child, he's still missing a lot of male secondary sex characteristics. You know, the leathery skin and facial hair that we talked about earlier when comparing young boys to women, traits which are typically seen as identifiers of men. Let's look at other male protagonists, shall we? Kratos has bulging muscles and facial hair, and his skin looks pretty rough and leathery. In other words, he's a man. Let's look at Solid Snake. Again, this man has fat pecs and facial hair. And then let's look at Link. He has a slender frame, long hair, no facial or body hair at all. He has a pretty high-pitched voice, and his skin is so smooth. Like, what is his skin routine? I just want to pour milk all over it. The closest comparison to a male protagonist that looks like him would be Cloud Strife, and Cloud Strife himself is known to partake in drag and seduce men. None of these aspects negates Cloud or Link's masculinity. Link and Cloud still fit the hero archetype pretty well after all, but the ambiguity invites speculation. While Cloud and Link are both Bishonen protagonists, Link now has the added context of his primary inspiration, a young boy who scorns romance and looks pretty girly. Human beings are pattern recognizers, and when the gaydar starts going off, everything starts to look fishy, and you start closely evaluating every little detail. I mean, is he? You know.
There, right there! Look at that tan, well-tended skin. Look at the killer shape he's in. Look at that slightly stubbly chin. Oh, please, he's gay. Totally gay.
But because of all the aforementioned traits and qualities baked into Link, discussion of Link's sexuality began pretty quickly. It's hard to pinpoint when the first fan discussions of the subject came about, but by the early 2000s, the topic seems as if it were pretty common, and just based off blogs and forums, art, and even animation.
And I got the clothes all washed and hung up to dry, and I even embroidered our initials onto the chest. It's just fabulous!
And don't get me started on Zelda. Gamers took the very obvious gay parallels with Link and ran with it. Gay people had Link declared the hottest video game character in Out magazine, and straight people ran with it themselves and made Xander and drawn together.
Wang, Woody, Wood, Hecker.
These queer perceptions of Link aren't a result of some new age, modern, woke mind virus. It's pretty obvious with a little bit of searching that these queer perceptions of Link are real and have existed for a long time. I'm not even trying to gaslight anyone with this video. Does Zelda have a very special friendship with Link? Yes. Have there been instances where Link and Zelda have displayed moments of intimacy with each other through various games? Yes. Link has even embraced Zelda on more than one occasion, and even in our newest duology of games, their relationship has grown even more close and intimate, as it appears they have even moved in together and share a domestic life. Are there aspects of Christianity within the games? Yes. Zelda, like Superman, is a Christ figure who comes from the heavens above, lives among mortals to save them, and dies for them. The Triforce, while canonically a symbol of power from polytheistic gods, has obvious parallels with the Holy Trinity. But you know what? Zelda takes inspiration from many world religions if you think and look hard enough. This doesn't mean Link isn't Christian, it just also means he's Shinto, Hindu, or anything that looks like a religion you already know and are familiar with. And because of Link's less traditionally male mannerisms, his feminine or androgynous character designs, he has one ear pierced. Google which ear is the gay ear. Most people, both gay and straight, have long perceived Link to be a little fruity, to the point where pretending Link can only be a straight Christian hero goes against Link's character design to be as widely appealing to everyone as possible. Tears of the Kingdom sold like gangbusters, so I'm pretty sure it's working to have everyone relate to your protagonist. So the idea that Link being gay, feminine, or trans is not in any way a new idea forced on by woke media as agents of the gay agenda. It is, however, surprise surprise, an argument made in bad faith and only goes as far back as Breath of the Wild. The ambiguous nature of Link and his gender and sexuality is all in the DNA of the character, which is even supported by words from those kooky guys at Nintendo. Around the time of the launch of Breath of the Wild, Eiji Aonuma, who is the producer of the game, stated that part of Link's nature is that he is a silent protagonist. So when designing Link in his games, he intended to give him his design a bit of ambiguity, so that boys and girls would be able to see themselves in his place. And Eiji Aonuma isn't some random guy in Nintendo. He's a producer and director of various Zelda games since Ocarina of Time. While again, he reiterated that Link is canonically male, he even tried to make him more masculine in Twilight Princess, only to go back to ambiguous or gender neutral in following entries. Link's gender ambiguity is meant for everyone to relate to him. This means that the cis, the trans, the lesbians, the gays, and pretty much anyone who decides to pick up the game and play it can relate to Link. Like, if some trans man who gets identified as a little boy by others wants to identify with Link, they win, Nintendo wins, we get more Legend of Zelda games. Who loses in this instance? The fact that Link has always been an all-inclusive character, and him continuing to be an all-inclusive, shouldn't take away anything from anyone. And I can even understand the pushback to inclusivity when it's forced or done without care or attention. But as I hope I've shown you, Link's gender presentation and feminine mannerisms are rooted in the design and DNA of the character since inception. It has been handled carefully and done so intentionally by the words of the game developers themselves. If you don't like it, the game itself easily glosses over those aspects, and other people choosing to explore it shouldn't take away from your interpretation or enjoyment of the character. And yet, here we are. The discourse rages on, and will continue to rage on forever. But I hope this little video might have better informed your opinion on the discussion, and maybe entertained you along the way. So if you see more intentional chuds crying gay wolf, think twice before feeding the trolls. Hey, if you liked the video, I would appreciate a like and a comment. If this isn't the first video of mine you've seen, why don't you subscribe? And if this is the first video, I mean, why not? You made it this far. Follow me down below on your choice of social media. This will likely be my last video of 2023. I'm in school and I don't want to be on a weekly grind to get videos out ASAP. This way, I can pace myself and allow myself the time I need to finish my classes as well as pay my rent. Unless this video does super well, my next video will release January 17th, so stay tuned for that if you're still here. Anyway, this is me, signing off now guys. Bye.